Next, the Palace of Mingguang, 580 lanterns. That was an impressive number, yet Pei Ming still didn't look pleased. The number of blessing lanterns that the Palace of Mingguang had received was actually lower than the year before. It was a shock for something to have happened to Deputy General Pei Su, and they had lost almost 100 lanterns for it. If it weren't for Pei Ming's strong base, he might have lost even more. Neither Shi Wudu nor Ling Wen congratulated him, only patted his shoulders. Up until this point, Xilian noticed that the blessing lanterns tallies were all very close together, only separated by 10s and 20s, with no single heavenly official really standing out. This meant that, in truth, everyone was pretty much the same, and no one was really winning. He was just thinking this when the announcer shouted out once more. "The Palace of the Watermaster, 718 lanterns." The banquet was in an uproar, awash with the sound of amazement. Once the heavenly officials came to their senses, they fought each other to send forth their congratulations. Shiwudu only sat there and didn't rise to receive the accolades. He didn't look particularly haughty, and seemed to consider this all perfectly natural. He was probably only the second heavenly official in centuries to even come close to the Palace of Divine Might's count. The first time Xilian ascended had been too long ago, and Blessing's lanterns back then had been even harder to come by, so it couldn't compare. However, as the saying went, men die for wealth, birds die for food. Humanity's passionate love for money would never lessen, and this performance was as expected of the god of wealth. Shi Qingxuan was even more excited than if she herself had received 700 lanterns, and she applauded with force, shouting to Xilian, "That's my brother! That's my brother!" Xilian laughed. "I know that's your brother." At the banquet, it was only Ming Yi all by his lonesome, who was still working hard at eating. Honestly, Xilian thought that out of everyone present, only he treated the feast seriously for what it was. It seemed he'd attended specifically for the food, as though he'd been starved while playing the part of a spy in Ghost City, and was working tonight to refill his stomach to the brim. When Xilian thought back to the street foods sold at the Ghost City stalls, he understood wholeheartedly. He couldn't help but wonder, did Huacheng ever stroll through the Ghost City streets every now and then? The night's most thrilling mystery had now been solved. Tonight, each heavenly official had socialized and watched plays to their heart's content, and they rose to their feet satisfied and ready to take their leave. "Wait!" Shiwudu snapped his fan shut, a sudden crease forming between his brows. If anyone else were to say wait, it probably wouldn't have been as effective. However, Shiwudu was known as the water tyrant for a reason. As if he had been born to give commands, the moment he opened his mouth, others unconsciously obeyed. Everyone sat back down in their seats, confused. "The top 10 are out. Does the Lord Watermaster have anything else to add?" "Is he going to give out merits too?" Xilian wondered. "The top 10 are out?" Shiwudu dryly asked as he flitted with his fan. No one knew what he meant except Shi Qingxuan, who suddenly cried out in shock. No! No! The top 10 aren't all out! Even if we count the Palace of Divine Might, only 9 have been announced so far." Everyone was stunned, and they soon started wondering aloud. "Only 9? It's true, I counted. There really were only 9. Someone else is ranked higher than Lord Watermaster? What? Who can it be? I don't know anyone like that." Just then, a white light as bright as day exploded across the black night. That light was from lanterns. Like thousands upon millions of fish swimming through gorges to the sea, countless lanterns slowly floated up. They shimmered and gleamed in the dark night, radiant and brilliant, like floating souls in a magnificent dream. It was exceedingly beautiful, brightening the blackened mortal realm. In the face of such a striking sight, no one could speak. All held their breath, and their words lay broken in their mouths. Xilian watched that sky full of lanterns in dumbfounded awe. It was like his own breathing had stopped, and he could hear nothing at all, and he remained dazed for a long while. It was only after some time that he realized something was wrong. The eyes of every heavenly official at the banquet were on Xilian. The announcer official had raised his quivering hand and pointed at him. Bewildered, Xilian asked, "What is it?" No one answered. Xilian pointed to himself. "Me?" Next to him, Shi Qingxuan slapped his shoulder. "Yes, you." Xilian was still in shock. "Me what? What about me?" The announcer swallowed a few times, with difficulty, and finally spoke again. The hundreds of heavenly officials present heard the tally from a voice that trembled with disbelief. Thousand Lights Temple. The Palace of the Crown Prince. 3,000 lanterns. 3,000 lanterns. All was silent. Then suddenly there was an uproar like a tidal wave. Never had anyone won 3,000 lanterns in a single night at the Mid-Autumn Festival banquet. Not even the Palace of Divine Might, which always sat at the head, as solid as the mountains. In fact, no one could ever have imagined such a number. Even 1,000 was difficult to pass. 3,000! That was truly unheard of, without a single precedent in all of history. It was more than all the other top 10 heavenly officials combined. Illustration. One can imagine just how incredulous every official was at that moment, and some even blurted out, "That has to be a mistake. They must have miscounted." Aside from the ridiculous idea that the announcer official, who had been counting for the Mid-Autumn Festival's Battle of the Lanterns for years, could have coincidentally miscounted tonight, the sight of that massive band of flowing lights alone proved the tally couldn't be wrong. And even if that number was wrong, it could only be an underestimation. Thus, another heavenly official hazarded, "Could it be that those aren't real blessings lanterns? Maybe they're the ordinary sort." That basically meant it's fraud. A few agreed. However, Shi Qingxuan shot down such talk. How could they be ordinary lanterns? Ordinary lanterns and blessings lanterns are of completely different make, and ordinary lanterns can't fly up to the heavens, so how could those be counterfeits? If Shi Lian had argued, the officials would probably have continued to doubt. However, because it was Shi Qingxuan who spoke up, and Shi Wudu was also present, no one dared say much else. Hitting a dead end, they changed track. "Everyone, where is this Thousand Lights Temple? When was it built? Who built it? Does any heavenly colleague know?" The announcer official replied, "No, but Thousand Lights Temple was clearly written on the lanterns that floated up." "But I've never heard of any Thousand Lights Temple." "Yeah, me neither." Shi Lian finally snapped out of his shocked reverie when he heard those complaints, and he said, quite earnestly, "Everyone, truth be told, not only have none of you ever heard of it, I haven't heard of it either." Surely there was no way Tianshan could have constructed it too. All the officials present lost their minds, destroyed by this unexpected thunder, incredulous and disbelieving, their tongues spitting with speculation. Shi Lian really wanted to say, "It's only a game, why is everyone taking it so seriously?" But first, very few took this game as a game, and second, he had ranked first place in this game, so if he said anything, he'd be asking for it. The other heavenly officials couldn't say anything either. They hadn't taken the winning spot, so if they said anything, it'd be as if they were trying to downplay not placing first. It was all exceedingly awkward. Just then, Pei Ming chuckled. "I did say that Crimson Rain Sought Flower didn't kidnap His Highness out of ill intent, but no one believed me. Will you finally believe me now?" His reminder enlightened the crowd with a startling epiphany. If this was Hua Cheng's doing, then it wasn't impossible. It would be a simple feat for him to light 3,000 blessings lanterns like it was nothing. Whether anything was going on between Shi Lian and Hua Cheng was a true mystery, as was the nature of their relationship. Before this, the majority had thought it was more believable to say that Hua Cheng kidnapped Shi Lian with nefarious intent. After all, there was no reason for Hua Cheng, who had always been unfriendly toward the heavens, to suddenly treat Shi Lian differently. However, there was also no reason to suspect that this show of courtesy was insincere, since it was so at odds with Hua Cheng's usual wild lawlessness. After this Mid-Autumn Festival banquet, one would be hard-pressed to say Hua Cheng harbored malevolence towards Shi Lian. 3,000 blessings lanterns. Even for the Watermaster who controlled wealth, that wasn't something one could pull off just because they felt like it. Amidst the chaos, the sound of steady clapping suddenly came from the head of the feast. The officials looked to the sound and saw Junwu slowly applauding as he smiled at Shi Lian. "Congratulations, Shinla." Shi Lian knew Junwu intended to take the heat off him, and was grateful for it. He bowed his head. Junwu sighed in awe. "You always manage to create miracles." Seeing that exchange, the feast quieted. After some hesitation, the crowd finally took Junwu's lead and clapped, their applause uneven as they sent their congratulations. No matter how shocked they were, by that point the heavenly officials had to admit that this Highness the Crown Prince always produced rare phenomena. It was as such back then, and it was most certainly the case now. The Mid-Autumn Festival banquet had ended. and the relentlessly rumbling Thundermaster had also packed up. The one who cheered the hardest throughout all of it was, of course, Shi Qingxuan. No matter whose ranking rolled out when, she would be the first to applaud, except for Pei Ming, of course. At first, Shulian wondered if stealing the Watermaster's thunder and bumping him from second place to third place would provoke his ire, but Shi Wudu didn't seem upset. Pei Ming and Ling Wen both congratulated him, and afterward the trio started discussing whose mountain hot springs would be best suited for a relaxing spa day and Twina massage. Hearing them, Shi Qingxuan asked, "Ge, are you all going out to play again?" Shi Wudu folded his fan. "Mm-hmm." Ling Wen crossed his arms and chuckled. "Lord Windmaster, want to come along?" "No, I've already made plans with people," Shi Qingxuan replied. Shi Wudu frowned. "I hope it's not anyone unsavory." "Is there anyone more unsavory than General Pei?" Ling Wen quipped. "Better shut up now, noble Ji," Pei Ming warned. Shi Lian waited until the two siblings spoke a few more words to each other, then prepared to leave the banquet with Shi Qingxuan. On the way out, they bumped into Mu Qing. It wasn't clear whether he'd been watching Shi Lian, but he certainly didn't look so pleased anymore. Fengshen, however, was the exact opposite. When he rose to leave the feast, he called to Shi Lian, "Congratulations." Shi Lian nodded to him. "Thanks." Lang Ying was settled in the palace of the Windmaster in the heavenly capital. The boy had been cleaned up, but he was still rather shy. When Shi Lian picked him up and descended, the boy didn't talk much on the road. Shi Lian first went into town to buy some fresh fruit for him to eat, but he didn't immediately return to Puchi village. Instead, he first went into a patch of nearby woods. This forest was quite lively. A bare-chested young man was hung upside down by a white silk band. Profanities and vulgarities spilled from his mouth, and a little child squatted under him, slapping away mosquitoes. Shi Lian had Lang Ying stand outside the clearing, then strolled leisurely over. When that young man saw him, he raged. "Shi Lian, you piece of shit! Fucking let me down this instant! I'm gonna die! I'm gonna die! I'm gonna die!" Shi Lian, however, said warmly, "It must be years since you last got bit by mosquitoes. Is it so bad to have a taste of being alive again?" That young man was indeed Shi Rong. Shi Lian had expected him to misbehave, and that he'd surely try to goad Guzi into cutting Roya. So Shi Lian had instructed Roya thusly: should Shi Rong try to escape, drag him to these woods and have fun. Shi Rong was using another's flesh as a shield against Shi Lian, so Shi Lian couldn't beat him to a pulp very often. However, he could still make that flesh suffer petty pains of other sorts. Shi Lian had chopped firewood and scavenged in this area, and he himself had suffered being bitten to bits by mosquitoes. It seemed Shi Rong was also presently bitten all over, and he looked more miserable than a dying man as he cussed loudly. "Where's your Snow White Lotus heart? Why can't you pretend to be a sickeningly sweet good person now?" Guzi hugged Shi Lian's leg and wailed, "Dagaga, please let my dad down. He's been hanging for so long." Shi Lian petted Guzi's head. Immediately after, Shi Rong yelped as he fell to the ground in a heap. To return to Puchi village, they had to traverse a maple grove. Shi Lian dragged along a bare-chested young man, spewing curses, and following behind him were two children, one crying and sobbing, the other sullen and quiet. "What an odd group we make," Shi Lian thought. As they hiked up the hills, he cautioned the two little ones behind him. "Watch your step, it's easy to trip here." That was the truth. When Shi Lian walked this path at night, late in returning from town after collecting scraps, he always tripped or tumbled. Maybe it was just his luck. Hearing this, Shi Rong immediately cried, "Dear God, please make this person trip to death right here, right now!" Shi Lian found that hilarious. "What's a ghost like you doing begging the heavens for anything?" Just then, a warm glow faintly emerged from the far distance. The path, once dark and obscured, was now illuminated, and the road brightened. When Shi Lian looked up, sure enough, it wasn't just his imagination. There really was light on the horizon. It was the light from those 3,000 blessings lanterns of everlasting light. The lanterns floated majestically in the night sky, overcoming the shine of the stars and the moon. Shi Lian watched, spellbound. After a moment, he breathed out a whisper. "Thank you." Shi Rong didn't know what any of this was about, and snickered at him. "Why the fucking thanks? Other people are just playing around. They're not lit for you. Stop thinking so highly of yourself." Shi Lian grinned, but didn't say anything, and didn't rebuke him either. He only said, "That beauty exists in this world is in itself something to be grateful for." There was beauty in his heart, and he wasn't afraid of killjoys. Borrowing the light from those distant lanterns, Shi Lian continued forward. And that is chapter 42.